So here we are in our webinar number 4 today on design thinking, and we're going to talk about taking action. We've all been taking action, but in particular the action part of the phase and the prototyping. So if I just gotta find, oh, here we go. So as we usually do, we'll do a recap of the previous phase and refining and making our selection on all the ideas we generated. We'll look at the canvases and how they were filled out and how they work for refining. And then we're going to talk about how we can prototype our solution. And this is a very important aspect because with the prototyping really gives us a new level of insights and brings us many benefits that people often miss out by skipping or rushing through this step. So if we look at our recap from webinar number 3, we gave an example where we were talking about the cost of picking the right and the wrong solution, of doing your work properly and understanding the needs. And we had the example of Apple, which we know is the most valuable company in the world today. And then we had the example of Nokia, which didn't do enough work and were at the time, they were the leader and they were much ahead of Apple, but they kept just making small changes and not really understanding the in-depth needs of the user, and they didn't really change directions. And within 3 years, they had fallen way behind. Apple took over, and now Nokia doesn't even make smartphones anymore. So it's something that can happen very quickly if you make sure you do the work up front to understand the problem, and then hopefully propose the right solution for it. You have a very strong position to go forward and have success in the future. We talked briefly, and I'm sorry we didn't have more time to talk about the aspect of personas, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Normally personas, we spend quite a bit more time, and the value of going in depth in personas is because it helps you make better decisions for your project. And when you describe your personas with enough detail, and many organizations have personas have very superficial ones, and they don't really serve enough of support to help guide decision making and help making sure you're on the right track. So to do the personas, ideally you want to do a few for each of your client types or each of your target market types, and build out enough details so that you know them as a person, and then you can think, okay, well, what would Michelle do in this situation? What would Paula do? What would I do for Paula? What would I do differently for Michelle? That's the level of information you want to have for your personas. Then we talked about how you generate new ideas. We talked about the big borrow steal, looking for other areas that capture you, that have great solutions that you can somehow adapt and apply to your own field, your own work. Inspirational ideas that come from anywhere, once again, that you can take this and think, wow, how can I make this work in my setting, in my context? Consider alternative business models. If you have a service, you add a product. If you have a product, add a service, or you add new services, go to new markets, have a different way to generate revenue. Also really important that a lot of people overlook is leaving out the emotional aspect. And what is the emotional aspect we're trying to solve, because the emotions are the drivers for the decision. So make sure when you're looking at your target market, what emotional problems are you solving for these people, not just practical problems. And then finally, taking whatever you already do well, whatever you've identified as your strengths, and thinking about where else can you put that, what other areas can you apply that would open up new opportunities for you. So here we have, thank you, Michelle. Michelle created this, has been giving us these great examples of canvases. And this is the selection or the refining phase. I think we've been using 2 different terms here, but in any case, we've gotten here because we identified a problem, we generated a bunch of solutions, and now we want to narrow down which are the best solutions to bring forward or to bring forward now in the shorter term. We're going to talk shortly about prototyping. So which of our solutions are we going to want to prototype? Before I go on to get into the details of Michelle's canvas, I got carried away and didn't let Paula make any comments, Paula, on the last on our last session, and any points you want to add.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, for me, it's very important to point it out two questions. The first that you have already pointed out is related to the identify the right person, the right type of person that have to use our solution, our product or service. Why? Because sometimes we develop solution considering our needs, our dream, but very often they don't fit with the users, with the consumers' needs. So this is very important. And another point is to consider the emotion that we have to consider when we develop a solution, because all the customer, all the users select a solution also considering their own emotion. So right now, I'm sorry, because I have not many time to analyze the canvas of Michelle, but I see that is concentrate on the small, medium business. And this is the same business on what we are concentrated right now, Christina. So I prefer that you explain your analysis about this canvas, and maybe I can add some opinion about that.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks those points. You're right on, Paul. Thank you for emphasizing the point about sometimes we think so much about our own perspective, our own issues, that we forget that maybe they're not the same as somebody else's. And in fact, we had an example of that from the Italian session today, or somebody thinks they have a great idea from their point of view, but in fact, who they were designing it for, there wasn't an interest. So we can get caught up in that enthusiasm and really believe this is excellent, but if we haven't done the work to validate that, then we end up going in the wrong direction. So for Michelle's canvas, I highlighted in blue a couple things. One, she's already listed the problems to resolve, noting the fast changing tech landscape, staying relevant with skills, shrinking budgets, and is business intelligence, what she's offering, something that is essential, or do people look at it as an extra, and especially in budget type periods, maybe it's not where they're focusing. What I liked about what Michelle described in her client is she has made, in doing this and giving a certain level of detail, she's made it think a couple of things easier for her. One, she knows who she's targeting, so she's not wasting time. She's noted that their age, they could be in any industry, but she has an idea of their age, and that they don't have time to understand or play with technology. So this is already a filtering question she can use to not only find clients, but to start digging in to find out what are their needs. If there's somebody who's busy with the rest of their business and they don't have time to go in depth on the tech spot, she can start to probe with questions related specifically to technology and their lack of time with that, and also what they're doing. She's noted obviously the budget constraints, and that maybe this isn't going to be an easy market, because she knows they have to justify if they make any investment. So she can be ready to say, okay, here's the value we add. Here's how I save you money. Here's how I save you time. Here's how I generate more revenue for you, or give you more information so you can generate revenue. And also key, opens the idea that understanding business data and setting KPIs is important. I mean, Michelle's not going to waste her time, because there are plenty of people who you can explain all you want with the most eloquent and lovely arguments, but if they're closed, if they're myopic on that, it's a waste of time. So, and also that somebody needs a custom solution, not going to buy something off the rack out of the box and plug and play. She can customize to their needs. So in specifying these areas, And when this is really when you go to work and doing the personas, and the personas have another layer, but this is a great start. She can start to not only identify who she's going to talk to and target, but give her an idea of what questions to ask them so she can be sure to express her value to them in the terms they need. Then she's broken down her ideas into the different time frames, which is good. Nothing, I'd say she did that just fine. I don't know, Paula, I know this is, you didn't have much time to look this over. Do you have anything to add on these comments at this point?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I see that it's very concentrated on the software as a service in the long term. And this is a very important point also for the small, medium business. And we have also to consider, for instance, in Italy, but I think all in Europe, we are launching an European Industry 4.0, and we are setting a lot of fund to support the small, medium enterprises. You have to consider that around the Europe, the 94% of company are small and medium company. And the European Committee is funding in sustaining this company with a lot of investment in innovation also of software. And software as a service is one of very important point of Industry 4.0. And I think you can shift, let me say, in the medium term, this kind of solution.
Yeah, fantastic. And I also today got some excellent feedback from my friend who I had lunch with. I was talking about this webinar, and almost in the same breath, she said, well, what about another tool, not a tool that I'm using, but a competitor tool? Are you familiar with that? I said, well, a little bit, but soon I will be more. She said, oh, that's great, because we're offering it to our clients, but we know nothing about it.
Oh,
so
great.
this long-term plan, she does the hosting. So it's not completely impossible that this is a real goal.
Not at all. And Michelle, it makes me, I'm so excited that you're having these conversations with people, and that it's opening up maybe something new, and right, and that you're setting yourself up. You know, we were focusing on this webinar for the short term, but obviously if you can plant the seeds for beyond, that's great as well.
Yeah, I have a group of friends. We don't usually talk about our business, you know, we're too busy with all the other fun things going on. So it was really great to actually realize, yeah, maybe there is some synergy there in the future. So I have to do that more. That is absolutely part of the short-term plan, is to use the social network more to find this ideal client.
Great. So let's look at your next page here. So so here you've broken down, you've taken your 3 different solutions and provided some details on it. And I re-added in some of the reminder pieces. I want to make sure I had it right. But for instance, in your solution 3, you know, your main interested parties to be involved will be current and future clients. And then you want to, I'm not sure who the decision makers would be, but you did note this thing, objectively look at industry and data available to make suggestions. And this is interesting what you found out, that one of your clients was not using one of the features that gives information available. So right there, that's a little pocket of potential need that you could go back and say, okay, you've offered these, I'm sure you've already thought of this, but just to explain, you've offered these services and you've offered this information, but what have they already paid for that they're not maximizing? And for you to go back and add as a new revenue, a new service, so they're not spending more on software or something, but that you can go in and say, look, I can optimize your use of this. You're probably not getting everything you need out of it.
Yeah. And I want to not fall into the trap, which you both mentioned, of falling in love with your own ideas. So just because I think this is a good idea, maybe they're not interested at all. So not to spend too much time on it, but to make a nice little pitch. And maybe I can even do that somewhere in the shorter term.
Yeah, I mean it's a very sort of cyclical process, so it's a little bit back and forth. So here you would do a mini test and mini validation to see, okay, is this something that there's an interest in? And if it's the time feature for this client, maybe there's another feature for another client that if it's, this client doesn't like this. And then you also go on to say, we asked what, you know, your selection criteria was on how you would decide which one to prototype. And in your case, you feel that it's reasonable to sort of go forward with all of them and see which one takes off, which is perfectly valid as well. I mean, depending on what people's resources and time are, and specifically what solutions they're proposing, there's no reason why you can't go forward with more than one. And then see, may the best one win, whenever. Paula, anything else to add?
Yes, thank you, Christina. Yes, I find very interesting, your three solutions. And also I find very interesting the selection criteria, because we are in the intangible market, in the intangible business. And of course, to have these three criteria is very important. But when you arrive in the solution selected, yes, I agree with you, can not put all the eggs on the basket, but three solutions can run parallel till one task off. Yes, it's true. But I think you can try, for instance, starting with upsell current clients, and they can represent your pilot run, your pilot test. Mm. Then, in parallel, you can start to expand with new clients, and of course find client in parallel using, for instance, the social network or whatever. But I think that you can stay focused on your current clients that you know very well, and maybe could be very interested to improve this kind of solution that you have already explained.
Yeah, in the ideal world, I agree. There are some caveats, but absolutely.
Yeah, great, Michelle. Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity and the feedback. Most appreciated.
We made, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just to say that we put, Paula and I put our project in this. And just to make one note on this, you know, we had maybe a similar, we had sort of this middle-aged, I guess that's what we are, target of entrepreneurs and professionals. And one thing, because our audience was broader based and had many different, came from many different backgrounds, and that's the reason we developed the canvas, because we wanted something interactive, but we thought the canvas was a way for each person to personalize. So that's what led us to proposing the canvas as part of our webinar. If we had just targeted the financial industry or the tech industry, we might have done something a little bit differently. But because we understood that our audience was coming from everybody from students to professors to managers to directors, we needed something that would function well for all of them. So that's why we chose this format within the webinar that we hope would be applicable in different situations. And then the other thing we did in terms of a very reactive and very also cyclical, we started in Italian because we're in Italy, practical time zone things, but then we decided, well, let's do it in English too. And that what's been helpful for us with that, and what we're learning with the two versions, one after the other, is that, you know, we can take from each of them and apply to the other session, so we can hopefully make it stronger. So in a way, we're running two tests simultaneously, and that's how we've been handling our project, applying this to ourselves. Any comments or questions on that before we get on to the next phase?
No, so you did this before you started?
Well, we didn't fill out the canvases formally because we were making the canvas, but these are the conversations we had. These are the emails we exchanged. We did agendas, we did notes, we did planning. So this is what our process was. We went through these phases too, but now of course we have the benefit of our own canvas. We can maybe be more methodical with it. So let's see. So now here we are in the act phase. We've come through understand, ideation, select. Now we're talking about taking action and taking our ideas to the next level, making them concrete. So why this picture? I picked this picture because this moment is a very serious moment in a person's life. And there's a risk, there's a risk that you could have your heart broken, or there's the reward that you could fall in love. But you have to take the action, otherwise you don't know, and you'll be frozen and you won't move forward. And so and I think of the movie Groundhog Day, where he had, I don't know if you've seen that, but he has the chance to keep trying until he gets it right with the girl. And in real life we don't always have all of those chances. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But with design thinking, it's actually much less risky than this moment. I don't know if it was the boy or the girl who decided to make the move here, but because we can prototype, we can learn, and we can refine, and we can fix our mistakes early on, and we can move on quickly, because a broken heart can take a long time to heal, but a prototype we can fix quickly. So the moral of the story is, take a step forward and put yourself out there with your prototype. So what exactly is a prototype? This is maybe what we think of when we think of a prototype. Often we think of it for a product, something tangible, something concrete, and often something fairly advanced. Something, like especially in cars, you could drive this prototype in reality. In the case of the cleaning products, it's a mock-up, but it's something physical you can touch. And even this is still a more advanced prototype, I would say. For services, it's not always easy to think about how we would prototype. And also, even for a product, how do we start with it? So if we look at service and experience prototypes, we have we have many different options, but we want to make sure we use it. We don't have an excuse not to make a prototype even for a service. And so we can make a storyboard. We can do we gave feedback to somebody who wants to do some coaching, just make an agenda of your program. We can do a wireframe, we can do Legos, and Paula works a lot with Legos. She's certified in Lego Series Play.
Exactly, Lego Series Play facilitator, yeah.
Yes, and role playing. So the idea is, when you make a prototype, the very first one you make needs to be most like the one in the upper left corner, that just with paper and pen, and you should do it in less than an hour. The reason being is you want to collect quick feedback. So we're going to talk about why we make a prototype. But Paula, any comments on these prototypes before we go on?
Thank you, Christina. Only a brief reference to the 3D prototyping that you can make using Lego. For instance, Michelle, you can consider that right now I'm focused on organizational design. And of course, when we implement new software, or we have to, let me say, upgrade some software, we have a very big impact on the organization. And for instance, involved in a lot of webinar or workshop, all the users designing the future of a software, creating a 3D object of their model is very, very powerful. It could be a very great solution to experiences in prototyping.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, cool, thanks. So prototyping evolution, just a little bit more about prototypes. Here we see, at first we have a drawing of a bike, and certainly, and this is more than a sketch. This is a scale drawing with dimensions, and we can learn a lot from this drawing. This would be a second or third stage prototype. from what we're talking about. And we can get an idea of proportion, how it looks, what, you know, we can specify what materials we'll need, things like this. Then we move on to the picture on the right, and this is actually a paper bike, a bike made from paper. So we can decide, well,
Yes.
when we have the physical form, how will it work? Is it comfortable to sit on the seat? We can't necessarily tell if it's comfortable from the drawing. If we have to lock the bike up, how outside, how will that work? How heavy is it? You know, we can show the weight on in grams or whatever, in pounds on the paper, but can we pick it up? How comfortable is it? So as we progress through the prototypes, we learn more and we get more detailed, and we always put it out for feedback. The same with this mask below. We see, you know, a 3D image of this mask, but when we actually have it in person, we can see, okay, does it fit on my face? Maybe it fits on my face, but it doesn't fit on your face. Or maybe it's uncomfortable around my nose or ears. Or we start, the more evolved we get, the more we learn and the more we refine. So we don't just go right from, let's make a mask and go to production. Easier once again for products. For services, we have to use a little more creativity. So why do we prototype? Well, first of all, we want to show, don't tell. We want to resist the temptation to over-explain, and we want to show what we have so we can collect feedback and see what people's response is. We want to find the quickest path to create an experience with our solution. And that's why we start with this version of a prototype that's just a quick drawing of something that we can do in less than an hour that doesn't cost money. We want to be proactive. We want to get beyond thinking and talking, because we can think and talk all we want, but until we start to act and put it in some sort of concrete form, we don't uncover insights. We don't see what we're missing. It's hard to validate if our prototype actually addresses the problem we wanted to solve with our solution. When we put our prototype out there and we collect feedback from our target users, we learn, okay, can we move forward, or is there information we need to gather and go back and do a little more research and then go back and build that into our prototype. We can obviously identify areas for improvement. That's the purpose. What information is still missing. Also important, if we're working with others, we make sure we're all on the same page. So even if, like, you know, when Paula and I have been working together on this project, we talked about, you know, I had something clear in my head and she had something clear in her head, but until we put it down on paper, we didn't necessarily see each other's point of view 100%. So that makes it much easier to make sure we're moving in the same direction. Yeah. Also, we want to make sure that we add, at some point, we put our prototype out in its actual environment, and not just in an office or a Zoom call, but in front of the people and in the setting, as close as we can come to capturing that setting. And this is where we think too about our personas. We get feedback from people, but we also, this is where we might do a little role playing, is think about how your personas will act to the prototype.
I think I actually, oh, sorry, go ahead, Paula.
Or Michelle.
Yeah, no, I think I actually did a prototype today. And one of the reasons that you didn't put on your list, or if you did, I missed it, is to start high level. Because whenever I do something, I immediately start at the most detailed level. You know, I'm going to draw a face, I start drawing the eyelashes. But you need to have big picture thinking. At least I know that I do. And so I'm doing kind of parallel to this. Christina knows in the past I did this demo with wine data about Italian wines. And I already am just so lost in the data and realizing my perfect, you know, demo. And I thought, actually, why don't I look at the demo I did 5 years ago? It was pretty good. So, okay, you don't want to rebuild the wheel. I already did all of this. So what is my new demo going to show that that demo didn't show? So I did a kind of prototype of what I want to do for this demo. And it's spot on here with why we need to prototype.
Yeah, Michelle, thanks. That's a really helpful point. And I think that was, we didn't make that clear enough, because when I talked about doing something fast, I implied high level, but I think you're correct that we want to emphasize that, because this is not where you get into the micro details. If you're designing an app, you're not talking about which button you push. You're talking about the overall experience. So we start high level and we come down into more details and more information. So that's really good, a really good point. Thanks. Paula?
Yes, exactly. This is a very important point. And another thing that we have to ask feedback on each level of our prototype and prototyping phase. For instance, you know, I'm Italian and we are famous because we tell a lot. And we say, in Italy also, we say fatti, non parole, fact, not a lot of words. And in this case, I have to start maybe with a very rough prototype, but it's very important to have it and to share it with my personas. Maybe only one friends, one colleagues, but I have to define this first level of prototype. Of course, it depends of the final product, of the final service that I have to implement. In this case, can I have a lot of different prototype, a lot of refining of this, of the same prototype? But it is a very important point.
So Michelle, a question on, so your prototype, when you're talking about the prototype, you're talking about the first wine presentation you made?
That I did the first one, so I rewatched it to make sure I don't reinvent the wheel. And I used that as a basis for the second prototype, the second video I'm going to do.
Okay.
So I want to start from where I left off, quick recap, you know, in 1 minute. And then how am I going to build on that?
Right. And so then you could be, and ideally a prototype, you have to get it out in front of the people. So even before it's perfect, get it out in front of some potential people.
Yeah, even I could already, with my ideas, tell people who know I'm going to show this. Do you think I'm missing anything?
Right.
So like they have their big thing now is hypercards. So yeah, that didn't exist 5 years ago. It exists now. So I know some things I want to show, but what else is interesting?
Yeah, and I would really urge you to, even if you don't want to show the whole presentation, to do yeah, but do a quick, you know, just a storyboard. Say, here's what I want to talk about.
It's just a sketch. Yeah, that's
perfect.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so how to prototype. So we're going to look at the Canvas brief up next, but what we want to do is decide on the format that will validate your idea quickly. So this is really what we were just talking about. You know, do you want to put it in the form of a storyboard? Do you want to do an agenda? Do you want to do a sketch? It really depends on what idea you're validating, but make sure it's a format that you can create quickly, that you can create low cost, and you can get something physical out in front of people, even if you have to email it and say, okay, does this make sense? You also want to start to think about KPIs. So what needs to happen for you with your prototype to make sure you're on the right track? Have some ideas in mind that you either see people interact a certain way or they respond a certain way. What will be your proof points that your prototype is successful in meeting the needs, or that it means, okay, we haven't quite achieved this, we have to go back. Also, to be sure that, you know, often when we create prototypes, sometimes we're doing them with our colleagues, and that's good because we can get the first round of feedback there. But eventually, if your colleagues aren't your target, you have to put the prototype out in front of your target and get feedback from them as well. You take this feedback and you refine it and you go to the next level. And as you talked earlier, maybe this next level has a few more details. Maybe it's a little large, it's more elaborate, but it's the next level prototype is based on this feedback when you put it out there. And the other thing you want to do is, as you develop your prototype, and let's say you do 2, 3, 4, 5, I mean, you can do a number of levels of them, you want to always tie in a big picture corporate goal. And this is especially important if you're working within an organization or you're developing something for a client. And so let's say your client has, as part of their strategy, increased sustainability. maybe your project has nothing to do with sustainability, but if you can demonstrate how it ties into sustainability as one aspect, you can show you're in alignment with them. So find something within your corporate environment or within your client's corporate environment, that their big picture goals. And even though your prototype in your project is one aspect of what they're doing, you make a connection to their bigger picture. So here we are at our canvas. The first thing you're going to do is pick the idea you've selected. In this case, you might want to do all three or do three versions of this canvas. So you pick the idea that you're going to focus on. Then you're going to describe how you prototype it. So this isn't the prototype yourself, you're going to describe it. What are you going to create? A storyboard, a wireframe, a flow chart, a 3D model, an agenda. What is the form your prototype will take? Then it's helpful to list the obstacles that in producing the solution. So time and budget might always be an issue, but maybe think a little bit more in detail what you have to overcome, what approvals you need to get. And also, this relates to the KPIs, the overall corporate strategy goals, that you want to make some connection of your solution to the strategy goals. Finally, as we talked about, you want to, on part 2 of this canvas, you want to add the success measures for your prototype. What KPIs, what are you going to be looking for? What will validate your idea? Make sure you tie one of them in with the corporate goals. List who you will get the feedback from. Who are you going to go to? If you've created personas, a few different types, make sure you get feedback from at least each of these types. Where is your solution going to take place? Can you mimic that environment, replicate, or go directly in an environment? Describe what the ideal environment would be. Then finally set a timeline for yourself to say, okay, here's my first prototype, I'm doing this, I'm going to go get feedback by the end of the week. Version 2, put it down on paper so you have a goal. The idea is once you get a few versions and you feel pretty comfortable with it, then you're actually going to put it out in the real world and do a pilot test. And so you should have an idea of when you want to do the pilot test and how you're going to share both the information on the prototype and eventually the project. So there is our action prototyping canvas. Paula.
Yes, I have already sent it to Michelle. Okay. And it's very interesting to consider that we have already received from the Italian attendees this canvas already fill in, and okay. They confused, let me say, in some part, the prototype with the pilot. With the pilot test. Is not the same thing, but I know that you already know very well what is the prototype phase, and sometimes it's possible that we confuse these two different stages of the product or services. Christina, do you agree?
Yeah, and especially right for services, it can be hard. Or people. The other thing is people get so excited once again about the idea, they rush to get it out there, and they really miss a crucial opportunity to refine the idea and learn before it's too expensive and too late. And it might be that you find out your solution is not correct at all. So you might decide to scrap it. You might decide to do a lot of work. You might decide to go back to the problem and pick another solution. Probably that's not going to be the case, but most likely in the prototyping stage, you can refine your solution so that by the time you get it out into the pilot, it becomes much stronger and much more likely to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another point, if I remember well, Christina, is that in the first field of action, if you can back in the first page, strictly, yes, exactly, the field 24 is strictly linked to the problem that we have to solve, and is very important to rewrite in the top of this canvas the reason why we have selected this kind of solution.
Yeah, you're right. That's right, Paula. We added that to the completed Italian one. And I think we can even add another field on this canvas so we can make sure that everybody sees that. Because we really want to make the link, you know, we've been breaking this up, but we really want to make the link, the flow from understanding, identifying the problem, generating solutions. Ideally, this is all one part. We've broken it up week by week, but really it's a continuation. So we want to make that connection clear.
Oh, you definitely did with the numbers because we're already up on 24 here.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad that we haven't lost it entirely. Maybe it was we want to emphasize that, but good. I'm glad that's
Really a process.
here. So so that's where we are with our action canvas, and next week will be the last webinar where we'll look at the prototypes people have made, talk about what's happened, briefly talk about what you would do after the prototype, and also collect feedback on how we can improve this interaction, this webinar, this information. So for now, though, any questions on what we've done so far?
No, I think you girls are doing a great job. It's very inspiring, and yeah, look forward to. Well, not necessarily looking forward to filling in my canvas because, as I said, my ideas are. But no, you're pushing me to do it, so it's a good process.
Yeah, I think you've done great, and thanks, Michelle. You've given us some really good examples to share and work with. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So anything else, or shall we finish it a few minutes early? We can close it off.
Yeah, well, that's good since I still have to pack and figure out how I'm going to get a chandelier in my carry-on.
Okay.
That's a good challenge. I'll leave you to that. And I know Paula has to go, so I'll probably we can sign off now, and Michelle, I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, thanks, ladies.
Thank you very much. See you.
Yep.
And ciao, Michelle, and ciao, Cristina. See you
Okay,
at the next meeting. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So